That's my biggest fear. An hour? You're going to give me an hour, that's it, to talk about this? So what I've done is I've taken what I feel are some of the major active ingredients to build resilience. And I'm going to talk a little about this. Now these things, again, are based on science. This isn't self-help, this is based on science. I work at the Pruitt Center for Mindfulness and Wellbeing, and our mission is to promote and enhance the science and practice of mindfulness and well-being. Science, number one, and practice, because we know that these things require practice. Right? So the first is awareness and mindfulness. The next is social relationships and connections. We're going to talk about the importance of positive emotions and how to savor those, how to utilize those. Growth mindset, sleep, and movement. We do those things, we will build our positive mental health. We do those things, we will be able to manage our adversity better. And science shows that. So, present moment awareness. I was cautious about using the term mindfulness at times when I come to certain schools because there's still a lot of, misinformation about what it is. But at the basic level, I think mindfulness is about present moment awareness, being aware of what's happening in our mind and our body and the world around us. In this given moment. That's easy to say, hard to do. Right? It is. Now, if we were to look statistically, we're not in the present moment very often. Right? And I have up there the wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Because if we're not in the present moment, where's our mind? We're the two places it loves to go. The past, right? So the first place you spend a lot of time is the past. When we think about the past, it's usually regrets, things we wish we could have done differently. No matter how much we think about the past, guess what? Can't change it. The other place our mind loves to go is where? Future. Oh man. Right? The future. Right? Worrying about things that haven't happened yet, or worrying about the things that possibly could. Right? Don't have a lot of control about that. So what we do know is that the more that we're in the present moment, right, there's a lot of benefit to that, and it is more difficult than ever. What I like to say is too is where our attention goes, energy flows. Whatever we put our attention on is really what we're watering. So I think it's really important to be aware of that. Where do we want our attention to go? We want it to be on all the negative things that are taking place in today's world, because if that is, I can guarantee you how you will feel. 100% guarantee. Or can you be more intentional and deliberate about putting it on? Because I will tell you, there are a lot of good things that are happening in this world. Right? Where do we want to place our attention? Right? So this is a skill that we can learn. It is foundational to learning. So I do a lot with education, and I know I got lots of educators in here. Mindfulness is so darn important for learning, because if they're not present, guess what? They're not learning. I tell professors all the time, I say, give your students 2 minutes before class to just arrive. Oh, Randy, I don't have time. And I look at them, I go, I don't care how good your lesson plan is. If they're thinking about the past, or they're thinking about something else, guess what? They don't hear a darn thing you say. Right? It is foundational to learning. Right? That skill. It also allows us to calm. Right? So we talked about how important, how difficult stresses that we're all experiencing. Mindfulness does allow us to calm our body. Within a matter of 3 deep breaths, we're able to access what they call the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that relaxation response that allows us to calm, self-soothe. It also allows us to regulate emotions. Right? It allows us to respond versus react. Right? Emotions are very difficult, right? So, number one, mindfulness and awareness allows us to kind of understand what we're feeling, to then be able to regulate those. The other thing it allows us to do is connect. It allows us to connect to ourselves. It allows us to connect with others when we're present. Like if we're not present, we're not going to connect with another human being. Like if someone comes to you, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, and they want to talk, and you're like, oh wow, What's going on? Conversation is done. We need this, right? We need our full attention. I think it's the most healing thing we can do for another human being is to listen and to be present. You don't need to be a mental health therapist to do that. Right? To be present, and we're doing less of it. I go to restaurants now, and you know what I see families doing? They're on their phones. They're not connected. We're actually in the process, and I don't think Lynn's here, but we're talking about incentivizing families when they go to a restaurant that we will find a $10 off if they will put their phones away and have conversation. Remember that thing we used to do? Right? Again, lots of benefits to that. But again, I can't stress enough how important this skill of mindfulness is about present. There's so many good ways of learning these skills. There's some great apps. There's some great books. Schools are doing it. There are some schools that are doing it. I wish there were more. There's more colleges that are doing it. I do a lot of work with athletics and teams all over the place. Guess what they're doing? They're doing mindfulness. Why? Because they know it's really important for their positive mental health. Next thing I want to get into is relationships, and we've talked about this, and I always like to say is, Chris Peters said this, other people have, our youth are lonelier than they've ever been before. We're in a loneliness crisis. And even though we think we're more connected, we're not. Right? I have people come into my office and say, Randy, why do I feel so lonely? I got 1,000 friends on Facebook. It's not the same. We look biologically, we are wired to connect human to human, face to face, and we're doing less of it. Right? We also know, and this is really scary statistics, is our empathy is decreasing. With college students, which I research all the time, in the last 10 years, their empathy levels have decreased 40%. Adolescence is decreasing at a rapid pace because we're not human-to-human connected. We're not seeing the pain in other people. We're not experiencing that. When we do connect, we experience what we call oxytocin, which is this chemical that feels really darn good. And if we're not connecting with people, we're not experiencing it. And I will say this, is I don't care, as humans, we all want the same. We all want to be seen, heard, valued, and respected. That is just part of being human, and we're not doing it at all. This is what I will say about relationships. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. And I will tell you this, and the research shows this, at times it can be one person. One person. So, when we're looking at children, it may be one person that believed in them, that took the time to get to know them, to get to time to let them know that they matter. I've had people in my office, I've heard stories, and I'm like, how the hell have you done this? And it's because one person believed in them, cared for them, listened to them. We have to do more of this. We have to find ways of connecting. There's a term, and they're using this all over the UK, and I get excited about new things that seem to be working. It's a term they call social prescribing. So when people go in and they're struggling, guess what they say? Right? We're going to connect you with things. And it doesn't matter what it is. Gardening, cribbage, like just being around other people. And it's amazing what happens when they connect with humans. All of a sudden their moods improve dramatically. Right? Our youth, we don't, like we said, they don't go and play anymore. We need to get them back doing these things. The more that we do, the better outcomes we will have. Positive emotions. Now, we all know about difficult emotions, and we experience those as part of being human. But I think, and we're more, our brains are kind of wired to kind of, always be scanning for those negative emotions. We have a negativity bias. But there's a lot of benefit to positive emotions. And this is a book that I would recommend if you're looking at it. It's called Positivity, and it's Margaret Fredrickson's work. She talks about these 10 positive emotions. And what she says is that when we experience these, there's an effect called the broaden and build. And what that does is it has the undoing effect. When we experience negative emotions, right, when we start to experience any of these, it can turn. It's the upward spiral. It's actually putting gas in the tank that when adversity comes, if we experience these, we're able to handle them better. Not only this, but when it comes to learning, when we experience positive emotions, it's kind of seeing things through a wide lens camera. We're able to be more creative. We're able to problem solve better. When we're experiencing difficult emotions, it narrows and constricts. So there's a lot of benefits to cultivating some of these. One that I think is the low-hanging fruit, and there's so much good research on it, and we rarely do it, is gratitude. Companies, I've worked with a lot of different companies, you know what they always say is, Randy, what is there's one thing that we can do that will have significant impact on our culture that won't cost us a cent? And I say gratitude. Right? Because it's so much, right? So it's really also saying is what we're affirming the good. No matter how difficult our day are, right, there are good things that we could really focus our attention on. Some very, very good research when it comes to expressing gratitude. One I want to just talk about is counting blessings. We do this in our classroom. I used to do this with my son before we go to bed. 3 things that went well in your day today and why. Okay. At first, that's a little bit tricky for them with children, right? Mom, Dad, Maggie, or dog. Right? I'm like, okay, the next day, what are some things that are different? But what happens is that all of a sudden during the day, guess what you start to notice? There's one. There's one. Right? At night, when you ask them, they start to recognize, there's one. There's one. So you're talking more about that. You're savoring that. You're marinating in that. You're getting the benefit of the good. What do we tend to think about when we go to bed? Right? The things that didn't go well. So it's one of the most powerful interventions. It's actually been shown to be as effective as antidepressants, right, for moods. The other thing is the gratitude journal, just writing about things that you're grateful for, or the gratitude letter, writing a letter to someone that you haven't properly thanked. These are all little interventions that you can do yourselves or with your children that can have significant impact on resiliency. Next thing I want to get into is kind of this growth mindset. And I think one of the biggest things that stops us in life is this fear of failure. And I kind of like to kind of reframe that is that failure is part of learning. So we need to be talking to our children and ourselves. We've got to be looking at that. There's a saying I say, is learn to fail or fail to learn. There is no other way. Right? So part of it is if we're not failing, we're not learning. And we have to be stretching ourselves and knowing that that is part of the process. It's part of the process. And this is the work of Carol Dweck's work. And, you know, the fixed mindset is the notion that people succeed because they're born with a gift and intelligence and talent. So it's rather I'm good at this or I'm not. And there's many of us that feel that way, right? And no matter how much effort there is, it's never going to change. So why would I even work on it? Right? And we know that there's many people that when they face adversity, that's that. There's nothing I can do. Now the growth mindset is the belief that success comes from effort and the ability that grows. I love this, right? Is that no matter where things are, we know that with effort, things can change. One of the things that was a game changer for me, and just as educators and parents, is how we praise one another and our children. One of the things that she talks about is, you know, my son would come home with a good grade, and you know what I would say to him? Oh, you're so smart. That would actually feed the fixed mindset. Right? So now what I always talk to him about is I see that you did really well, you must have worked really hard. That supports the growth mindset. That with effort, things can change. The other thing is this powerful word yet. Right? And I love this word because there's been teachers that have even used it, it's no longer pass or fail. It's if you pass, great. If you're, if not, you're not there yet. Right? I think just the language we use with ourselves, the people that we work with and are around, have a very big difference. So I want to get into a bit of studies on sleep because they're so darn important when we talk about mental health. This is an area that for the last few years I've really kind of looked at. There's some really good research on it. And any person that I work with, I'm always checking for their sleep because it is so important when it comes to mental health. On average, adolescents are sleeping 1 hour less than prior times. 1 hour is a lot. And I think it goes back to the phones. If your son or daughter have phones in the room, get them up. It is, it's going to disrupt their sleep. Children aged 9 to 12 who keep their mobile phones on their bedsides sleep an average 21 minutes less. When we talk about sleep, you look at the DSM, which is kind of the Bible of mental health disorders. It is a symptom of all mental health disorders, sleep disturbance. What they're now saying is that it's a precursor. That when people start to experience sleep disturbance or poor sleep, that actually is kind of the start of what kind of escalates the mental health. So we need to really be investing in our sleep. Loss of sleep decreases your well-being, productivity, health, and ability. It is the time, and there's some really good videos on this. When we sleep, our body kind of, it shuts down. It's the time that it rejuvenates and repairs. The brain becomes very activated when we sleep. And it's the time that it actually cleans out all the gunk that takes place, throughout the day. It is the time that what happens is they call the consolidation that the brain happens. What that means is it's taking short memory into long memory. So what really happens is that we're not sleeping, we're not learning. We're not sleeping, we're not learning. So it's that important, right, when we talk about mental health and learning, is that we need to be invested in sleep. So I'm just going to give you some tidbits, and this is from the work of Matthew Walker and many others too. But really, when we talk about sleep, it does start in the morning. For all of you, and even sons or daughters, get some sunlight right away. It's tough here. What I do is I have this thing they call a happy lamp you can buy on Amazon for $25. It's the first thing that I do. So when you wake up in the morning, you want light, because that gets your sleep rhythms going. I always say stick to a sleep schedule. So for all of you, kind of going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. Your son or daughter, same thing. Establish a bedtime routine with yourselves or with your son or daughter, right? Is saying, okay, too many times it's go, 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 hop in bed and think the brain's going to go to sleep. It's not. It needs time. Okay, so take the 15, 20 minutes, shut off all those things way before then, but at least half an hour, slow things down, hot bath, read, whatever those things are, will help the sleep. I'll say dark, cool, gadget-free. That is what the research shows. So lights, my son had these neon lights in his room. I said, they're gone. They're gone. I'm not having those in here. I read too much research. Dad, I said, they're gone. Right? I just invested in those darkening shades. Dark. 67 should be the temperature for ideal sleep. Set alarm to go to bed. I don't know if any of you do that, but it's a nice little reminder, even with your children, right? Beep, okay. No different than getting up. That's the signal it's time to get ready for bed. And then take a hot bath or shower that can sometimes, because that cools the body. Right? So these are things that can be very helpful. As you can see here, this is the recommendations for sleep. And I'd be hard-pressed to say that there's too many of us that are getting what we need. Adults 7 to 9. As you can see teenagers, 8 to 10. Now, I'm going to talk about what I feel the wonder drug is, right? And it improves learning abilities, focus, enhances cognition, boosts immune system, increases energy, improves creativity and memory, reduces stress, has long-lasting effects, fights anxiety and depression, enhances mood and sleep, has no negative side effects, it's legal and it's free. Right? Exercise. What it is, right? It's exercise. That is what it is. We know that. The research continues to show it. I always tell people, stop wasting money researching it. We have enough. It's that evident. Right? We have. I don't even at times like to use the term exercise because I think there's a lot of people that right away it's like, whoa. I would prefer to use, and what I tend to use is movement. Move the body. I don't care how, move it. People say, I don't want to go to the gym. I said, what do you like to do? I like to dance. Dance 20 minutes a day. Zumba, snowshoe, it does not matter. We have to move our body. And the reason why is this is what happens. These are the brain chemicals that happen when we move our body. Adrenaline, dopamine, endorphins, endocannabinoids, and BDNF, which is kind of the miracle growth for the brain. Like these are the things that happen when we move our body. And this is the good thing, is that there's no dose too small. This is it. There is no, regardless of what we do, we just get up and move our body for a few minutes. There is benefit. Now, is there more benefit the longer we do, the harder we go? Yes, there is. But I will tell you this, we sit way too much. And I will, if there's any educators in here, I'm just going to tell you, your students sit way too much. Right? We expect them to sit all day. The other thing is, never ever take away, right, where they're going outside to move because of behavior. That would be what I would tell you to do if the behavior is poor. Move. I know teachers that have little trampolines in the back, right, just to get them moving, and their behavior seems to settle. Right? We need to find ways to help our children move. We have to move. So for both psychological well-being and brain health, 20 minutes or longer, more than once a week, commit to 6 weeks. This is the thing with movement, is it does take 6 weeks for people to get benefits. So that's where it is a bit of a struggle. But what I will tell you is when we stick to it, number one, it builds our resiliency, because exercise or movement is not difficult, so we start to gain. We also gain self-efficacy. Right? Self-efficacy is feeling good about ourselves, knowing that we can accomplish things. So by doing this, we increase that. We'll leave it up to some questions. So we've got a bit of time here. I would love to hear comments, questions about any of the information that I shared. Yeah, I think part of it is making sure that we're always communicating. We're talking about these things. We're checking in. Same with, it doesn't need to always be parents. I mean, educators, it's part of, I said, your students on a daily basis. That's why present moment awareness is so important. To notice things. If we're over here and over here, we don't know what's right in front of us. We miss a lot. And the thing that they say between, females and males is females spend more time on social media, so they're constantly comparing themselves. Not good enough, not smart enough. They have more. Now, again, this is just statistics. Boys tend to spend more time gaming. So, but there's some serious consequences to that constant comparison and not feeling good enough. So, but yeah, I think we just need to be aware. We need to be talking more about that. We need to make sure that we're checking in as much as possible. Hold others, yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of different things. I mean, number one is get off the screens. Part of the problem is technology. The blue light has an impact because what it does is it's the melatonin. So part of it that disrupts sleep. So one of the first things I would say is prior to that, get off the screens sooner. If you are going to be on screens, I would get the blue light blockers. You can get glasses that have blue light blockers. That does help. The other thing too is I would get them to kind of practice some just relaxation and mindfulness before. I use an app called Calm. It's wonderful for sleep. I don't have difficulty falling asleep, but I do at times when I wake up. It's difficult for me. I put that on and within 10 minutes, I'm lights out. So that's the biggest thing is the brain will not sleep when it's activated. Okay? The other thing that I will say is the bed in the bedroom should be for sleep. Many times children are doing a lot of different things in their bed. They're playing a lot of video games, they're eating in their bed, so the brain gets confused with what that is, right? I would say is the bed is for sleep. Do all those other things outside the bed that can help us sleep. So, yeah.
What about that aromatherapies or any kind of lotions or oils or things that
I think anything that's going to calm the brain is going to help us sleep. So, yeah, I mean, I think, again, there's not a one-size-fits-all. I think part of it is finding what works for each person. That's what I love to do is to kind of dive into that. And I think there's a lot of people love aromatherapies for sleep. Right? I highly suggest, again, the anchor, right? Like, so you want the brain to say, okay, I smell it, it's time for sleep. Others? Yes?
I have a 12-year-old son, and just ask him, he's the only one in the entire middle school that does not have a cell phone.
You tell Louie that does not have one either.
So I fight that battle, and it's like, you're not getting one, and we argue, and we fight, is there a conversation that I can say that just is, I know this is not good for his brain, he does not need one, I don't want him to have one, I think for all the reasons you said, I'm aware of it, is there difficult when other parents give it to their children for their own reasons, and that is what it is. But, do you have any suggestions on how to have a conversation with a child like that, of why it's not value added that you should have one? And, and then at what age do you feel, or have you researched that it is more appropriate for them to get one?
Yeah, it's a good, I don't know the answer on the last one. I would say this is the thing too, is that I'm not against phones. I'm just against a phone that they can access everything. Like remember those flip phones? Oh yeah, right. Like those still work, like, yeah, I mean, so that's the other thing is like, an emergency or this and that, like you can still use these things. It's, when you put that in someone's hands and you think they're going to use it responsibly, you're wrong. It's not their fault either. Like, I'm not blaming kids. That is the most addictive thing that, so that's like putting candy in someone's, and saying, oh, just have one or two. It's not going to happen. So, I think part of it is having the conversation of saying, listen, here's a phone. We'll get you this for you to use that. I know everyone else has it. I know there's a lot of pressure on parents right now. Right? They're saying, well, I don't want my son or daughter to be left out. That's how who wants to communicate. Right? And there's some of that. And I'm like, yeah, I know, and it's kind of weighing the pros and the cons. I commend you, right? The research shows the longer you go, the better. We know that the brain development right now, I mean, during those years, there's a lot of things going on there, right? So it's very similar to alcohol, right? The longer people go without, using that substance, we know the better it is, right? So, and again, no judgment. I don't want to judge, my son has it, he uses it way too much. We battle, I'm in the same battle with you. But I do want to make sure that we're all aware of what we're up against and what we're fighting against. That is what I do want to know.
The emergency phone wasn't good enough, I just want to.
Okay.
Emergency phone that dialed up, flip phone, that was not going to.
No, I know.
We'd rather have nothing than sit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What else?
Part of the whole issue we have with the 17 is the phone now, especially the 17-year-old, is how we communicate. He doesn't really communicate. He takes pictures of himself all the time. Like every 20 minutes, it's like, what are you doing? And there's no explanation. That's what it is. And so they're making up this socialization that isn't really socialized.
You nailed it.
It's,
And what's happening is that I see students where we talk about putting themselves out socially, and they experience social anxiety because that skill has been atrophied. That's the problem. It's like if you don't use it, you lose it. And part of it is they bought into this. Well, I feel I'm more connected, but the more they use it, they actually feel more disconnected. And that's where the loneliness comes in. It's like, why do I still feel this way? And when we feel lonely, what happens is our body goes into fight or flight. Because we've inherited that genetic makeup. Because if we were lonely and isolated many, many centuries ago, we should be in fight or flight because we're not going to survive. The body still responds that way. So when we're lonely, we're experiencing high levels of stress. We know what prolonged stress does to mental health. So those are things like, I would say is, I teach a class and no phones, zero, and that's one thing. We sit in a circle and you know what we do? We have deep conversations. The first 2 weeks, you should see these college students squirm. It's literally absolutely painful for them. But you know what happens after those 2 weeks? They love it. They don't even realize what they're missing. They experience it, and guess what? They can't wait. They get there early. I offer at 8:30 in the morning. They're there early because they want to have dialogue and discussion, and connection, and deeper conversations. Right? So I think these are the things.